actually, so going back to Tim Strides and maybe YE, when you work with the community, do you typically work with property owners, with neighborhood people, with developers? Who do you typically, who typically reaches out to you regarding brownfields issues?
I can start that off. Well, for us, it's all of the above. I think we normally work with developers most often, but like I mentioned, we've been doing significant outreach in the community as part of the community planning process. So we have close ties with all the stakeholders throughout the communities. But as far as I guess more recently and in direct connection with the Brownfields assistance we offer, it's probably more aligned with developers when they're coming in. It's another resource they can take advantage of.
YE, I think you were trying to get on too. Do you have a response?
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so our sites are ones that we are trying to acquire. So we're just working with the previous landowner to get access to do the phase 1s or phase 2s. If we don't get access to do the phase 1s, we will do them from the public access area.
And what's in store for Hawaii Brownfields? Are you applying for more grants?
We're definitely looking at that for sure.
Okay.
Maybe the cleanup grant.
Right. Well, thank you so much. For John, question for you. So as a private developer, what can a city or the state help you to make developing these sites that have may have issues easier?
That's interesting. It's hard to I don't want to generalize too much, because the easy answer, and it's a good idea sometimes, is, take on the phase 1, take on the phase 2, because it's easier for them at times to get the grants, do those sorts of things, than it is for a private developer. And this isn't said with any great, hopefully with no huge agenda. Private sector can be faster though, so we can oftentimes do it quicker with a little less, just kind of normal bureaucracy. So it depends. If it's a really hairy site, I think it's really good to have the environmental work done in advance. If it's a little more normal, private sector is probably pretty good at taking care of it. Those are the main things. I mean, I developed in Boston and, here and other places, and, we certainly have our issues. Hawaii definitely does. So does Boston, so does DC. So they exist every place. To the extent we can speed things up, it doesn't help anybody. The time that it takes for us to deliver housing in a market that really needs housing, that's not a good thing. It's not doing anybody any good. So those are things that cities and states and jurisdictions can help with.
And also, a question for both of for Marian and for John. In many states, constructing housing is getting more difficult because you have to assure that you have access to utilities, maybe the services, water, and energy, and in many cases those are constrained, and in some cases some places want those utilities to be clean or renewable. And so what is the situation in Hawaii where and I notice you do solar, John, is the development of solar tied to development of residential?
There is. So Miriam, I'll start and I'll go real quick and let you jump in. And because I neglected to say the element, the project that I'm doing right now, we probably won't be net zero, but we're attempting to be net zero, and we'll be very, very, very close to net zero. So we'll generate as much electricity as our residents consume. We'll still be tied to the grid. So it's not as if we'll be totally disconnected and there won't be a generator associated with our project. So if we get, crazy cloudy weather for a week, Hawaiian Electric will still be providing electricity to us. So there is a requirement. So housing, kind of depending on its stripe and what it is, needs to put in solar hot water. So not PV, but heat the hot water with the sun, which is generally a moneymaker. So that's not a bad thing to do. In my case, I'm not doing that because I want to use every square inch of rooftop for PV. And I'm doing 2 projects and almost 100 megawatts of utility scale solar. So that's really big. It's not a bad thing. Economically, it's not a bad thing. Societally, certainly it's a very good thing. And it's something that can be done with the housing.
About, for affordable housing, it's probably even more of a challenge to work with you.
It's more of a challenge, yes, but I think both the public lenders, excuse me, and the private lenders, as well as our investors, are interested in pursuing projects that promote green building principles anyway. So we've incorporated that into our projects. Certainly the HHFDC requires solar water heating in the projects that it funds, which we have at Nahona. We also have, I'm told, the first vertical installation of solar PV. It's on the Mackay side of the building, as you could, if you take a look when you're down there. I don't know how efficient it's going to be because, again, it is vertical, but we attempted to do that just to see how it would work. Going back to your point, Ignacio, about utilities, though, that has been a challenge. Certainly both the power grid as well as sewer infrastructure has been a huge challenge, particularly in the rail corridor. So I understand that public agencies are certainly aware of the problem, trying to fix it, but that's certainly a challenge to developers who can't really push forward unless there's sewer capacity.
We have a question from the audience as well. To both, the developed environment is very different than from the mainland. In some cases, it could be harsher environment. You have very nice weather, but there's the salt air and the strong winds, and again the availability of sustainable materials. Please, any of you chime in as to how you deal with sustainable development from the ground up.
We're more expensive. Hawaii is more expensive. So bringing stuff in is it's a lot more expensive here than it is really any place else from a material perspective. I understand that the price of construction is more expensive yet in San Francisco and places like that. And then I think our microclimates are pretty amazing. I remember just a funny example, but I did a swing set on the Marine Corps base. We did all of the Navy and Marine Corps housing, very large project. And it was right on the water, beautiful place for kids to play. And the swing set rusted. I think it was within a year, it had rusted almost into nothing. And so, we have the perverse advantage of extraordinarily high electricity costs. So developing at least sustainably in terms of electrical use is something that we haven't a weird opportunity to take advantage of, because if we build it, it's more profitable than it is elsewhere. But in other respects, it is difficult. I think Hawaii is more difficult than any place else.
Anyone else? Actually, to follow up to the city folks, Tim and YE. So you're, of course, concentrating in TOD, and this might not be your department, but what are the pressures for sprawl on Honolulu particularly? And perhaps if anyone knows about pressures for sprawl in the other counties. And so, Tim, how do you neutralize the desire to stay away from downtown and live outside town?
Well, I think combating sprawl was really the biggest driver in gaining widespread acceptability of the rail. We've kind of restructured our city island-wide policy around the rail, so that growth and the kind of population growth pressure is concentrated around the rail stations and in those neighborhoods that can, with that infrastructure can accommodate higher densities. And so I think, with some of the initial opposers like Sierra Club coming around, eventually realizing that might have to give up, some prime ag land out in EBA in order to accomplish a greater good, and then just incorporating it in our island-wide general plan down to the regional plan level and neighborhood plans for these TOD areas. It really helps solidify that.
Well, and we have net out migration. We've had out migration for a couple of years now, so we're not getting bigger, we're getting smaller.
Right. So, well, yeah, I know that Honolulu does make its efforts to promote infill, and our next speaker, Sven Lindstrom with DOH, will talk about the HDOH and HERE programs to, illuminate how DOH helps, perhaps hand in hand with other agencies, to facilitate redevelopment on brownfield sites. So Sven, whenever you're ready, we're going to transition to you.